Hi, I am Assistant Professor Aditi Mathur, International Schools of Business Management, Suresh Kanvya University, Jaipur. And in today's video lecture, we'll be starting with our new unit, that is revenue. So let us just first understand what do we mean by the term revenue. The amount of money that a producer receives in exchange for the sales proceeds is known as revenue. That means the amount which you are earning because of the sales you have done for the goods and services as your final goods, that amount, that sales value is known as the revenue. The amount which you have earned from the other investment will not be taken into consideration as the revenue in economics. The only amount earned because of the sales of your final goods and services will be taken as your revenue part. So, for example, let's take that if a firm gets 16,000 rupees from sale of 100 share, then the amount of 16,000 is known as the revenue. Revenue refers to the amount received by a firm from the sales at a given quantity of commodities in the market. So that means that n number of output, respective sales is your revenue. Revenue is a very important concept in economic analysis. It is directly influenced by sales level. That is, as your sales increases, revenues also increases. So we know that we are earning the revenue from our sales. So that is why the revenues and our sales are directly proportional. If one increases, another also increases. If sales number of units decreases, the revenue will also dip down. So if I say that being a manufacturer of wooden chairs, you have earned rupees 15,000 from selling the one of your machinery, will that be counted as revenue? The answer is no. The revenue is only the amount which you are earning from selling the chairs, wooden chairs, which you are preparing in your factory because you are a manufacturer of wooden chairs. Any other source of earnings will not be taken into considerations as revenue in your economics. So, if we talk about the revenues, there are three important terms or three important types of revenues which we should know in this entire unit. The first one is your total revenue, then we have average revenue, followed by marginal revenue. So now let us just discuss about the total revenue. So total revenue refers to total received from the sales of a given quantity of a commodity. So that means the total sales which you are making out from selling certain number of goods, that is your total revenue. It is the total income of firm. Total revenue is obtained by multiplying the quantity of the commodity sold with the prices of the commodity. So that means if I have to write down the formula of my TR, that is my total revenue, it is going to be equal to quantity into price. So let's just solve a very small question to understand how to calculate TR. So we have output oblique sale unit and we have to calculate total revenue. Let us just assume that we have our total outputs or total sales of, let's say, 0 units, 10 units, 20 units, and 30 units. And let us just assume that the price of our commodity is 20 rupees per unit. So our TR, which is your total revenue, will be equal to multiplication of the quantity and the price. So at 0, our TR will be also 0. At 10, our TR is equals to 10 into 20, that is 200. At 20th level, it will be 400. At 30th level, our TR is equals to 600. So you can also see that as and as my units of sales or my output is increasing, my quantity is increasing, my total revenue is also increasing, right? So the formula to calculate TR is equals to quantity into price. So now let's understand what do we mean by average revenue. So average revenue refers to the revenue per unit of output sold. It is obtained by dividing the total revenue by the number of units sold. So the formula is AR is equals to TR divided by quantity. So I can just write it over here, TR divided by quantity, or you can even write quantity as N. Same way, the way we calculate average cost, right? Average production, that same way only total revenue divided by N will give you your average revenue. Let's solve an example. If the revenue of a sales of 10 shares at the rate of 160 per share is 1,600, then calculate the average revenue. So we have to first calculate the total revenue, which will be equal to quantity into price, which is further is equals to 160 into 10, that is 1,600. Now we have to calculate average revenue, which will be equal to total revenue divided by N. So it will be equals to 1600 divided by 10, and we will have it as our 160. So there is one important point which I have to discuss with you right now. That is that our average revenue which we have calculated over here, it is equals to our price, which is 160. Can you see? 160 is equals to the average revenue which we have calculated. And because of which we say that your average revenue and price are same, right? So always remember that your average revenue is equals to the price. Many a time in questions, they try to mislead you by not providing you the price of the commodity directly, but they give you the average revenue. In such cases, you just simply take into the consideration the average revenue and calculate the total revenue. So let's solve an example to understand those types of questions. So let us just continue the same example and say that we have 10 shares and we know that our average revenue is equals to 160, right? So how to calculate total revenue? So it will be simple, that is quantity into average revenue, which will be 10 into 160, which is equals to again same amount, that is 1600, right? Many a time in question, you might be even asked to calculate the N if you are given the average revenue or the total revenue. So same mathematics can be applied, and with the simple golden rule of unitary method, you can solve such questions. So let us just now assume that we are given as AR is equals to 160 and TR is equals to 1600, and we are asked to calculate the quantity level or the outputs which are sold on such a way that our total revenue is equals to 1600 and average revenue is equals to 160. So for that, what you're going to do is simply divide your total revenue with your average revenue. Now, how we have reached to this formula? So let us just continue with our formula of AR is equals to TR divided by N. With the help of the simple maths and linear equation with the cross multiplication, we can say that our N will be equal to TR divided by AR. So if you will further calculate in this illustration, you will find out that your N will be equals to 1600 divided by 160, which will be equal to 10 units. So in examinations, the questions can be created in such a fashion that you think that there is missing information, but everything will be already given to you in the question. So I'll request you to read the question 2 times, 3 times, and then finally come up to the conclusion and then solve the question. So let's just have a quick recap on the formula of average revenue before we wind up. So average revenue AR is equals to TR divided by N. So AR is equals to the unit sales receipt and the price, and is always per unit. Since the seller received revenue according to the price, price and AR are one and the same thing. And because of that, there are many a time questions which come in the exam in which you have to calculate the TR or N when your price is not given but AR is given. So now you know that your AR is always equals to price of the commodity. Now let us just understand our marginal revenue, that is MR. So marginal word itself always denotes the additional. So that is why MR or the marginal revenue is the additional revenue generated from the sales of the additional unit of output. It is the change in the TR from the sales of one more unit of the commodity. And the formula for MR is MR at level N is equals to TRN minus TRN minus 1. The same way we did the calculation for the marginal cost or marginal production. So let us just take an example and understand the concept. Let us assume that we have output levels of 10, 20, 30, and 40. And our price per unit is equals to 100. So with ease we can calculate TR, which will be equals to 1000. How we have calculated? 10 into 100, 1000. Now 20 into 100 is 2000. Then 30 into 100 is 3000. 40 into 100 is 4000. Now let us just learn how to calculate MR. So as we know that MR is calculated to know the additional revenue which you have earned because of one more unit of the sales of the commodity. So for the same way, we are actually going to subtract the both to get the MR. So for the level at 20, your MR is going to be 1000. Then at 30, also it will be 1000. And over here also it will be 1000. Why? Because 2000 minus 1000 is equals to 1000. 3000 minus 2000 is 1000. 4000 minus 3000 is 1000. So what we have done, we have subtracted the TRN, that means at the level 3, minus TRN minus 1, that means a previous level of the total revenue. And this is how we calculate the additional or the marginal revenue. So that is why our marginal revenue or the additional revenue which we have incurred because of the sale of one more extra unit of our product is the TRN minus TRN minus 1. So in examination, when you calculate in the table, you can just simply subtract the previous one, the previous figure of TR, and then calculate it. But I'll request you all to please always mention the formula, because the formulas have the scoring part also in the total marks. So you have to first write the formula, and in the working notes show the calculation of MR at each level of output, and then only you will get the good marks or the full marks, I can say. So now let us just understand the relationship which exists between the AR, that is your average revenue or the price, and MR, which is your marginal revenue, under the pure competition. So pure competition, which is also known as the perfect competition, a large number of firms are assumed to be there. And all the firms in the perfect competition sell which types of goods? They sell your homogeneous types of goods, because they all sell same type of product. The supply of each seller is just like drop of water. It might drop of water in a mighty ocean, so that an increase or decrease in production by one or more firm experts no prediction influence on the total supply and on the price in the market. The collective forces of demand and supply determine the prices in the market, so that the only one price trend to be prevailing from the whole industry. So the point to be taken into consideration from this paragraph is that the market forces demand and supply determines the prices in your pure competition or your perfect competition. Each firm has to take the prices which are given by the market and have to sell its quantity at that ruling market price only. In simple term, the firm is a price taker, and the firm's demand curve is infinitely elastic. As the firm sells more and more at the given price, its total revenue will increase, by the rate of increase in the total revenue will be constant. So the total revenue will increase, but the rate of increase in the total revenue will be constant, since AR is equals to MR. So the points to be the points to be taken into consideration over here is that in perfect competition, the firms are price taker, and the market forces demand and supply determine the market price at which the goods have to be sold. Over here, your AR is equals to MR is equals to price. Let us just take an example. So you have quantities of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Your average revenue or price of the product is 10. Your total revenue will be 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, and 70. So your marginal revenue will also be 10 rupees only, because the MR is equals to TRN minus TRN, and we are in perfect competition, because of which we can say that your MR is equals to AR, or which is also equals to price of the commodity. This is how our price or the revenue curve is drawn in the graph. You can see the y-axis depicts the prices, the x-axis depicts the quantity which are sold, and over here from industry, with the help of the demand curve and supply curve, you determine your equilibrium level of price. And this price is actually carried forward, and your firms take into the consideration, and that is how your AR and MR is calculated. This is in the case of your perfect competition. In examination, you have to draw both the graphs and show in this format only. So first, you have to draw the industry graph, in which you will draw the demand curve, then the supply curve. And at the point of intersection, you will draw the price line, and it will continue it to in the next graph, which will be for the firm. And over here, that price will continue and it will remain same, because your AR is equals to MR at every level of output. So that is why we can say that in perfect competition, your AR and MR curves are horizontal, parallel to horizontal and parallel to X axis. Now let us just consider the calculations of your revenue in the case of imperfect competition. The relationship amongst the total, average, and marginal revenue under imperfect competition, all the market forms rather than the perfect competition, can be explained with the help of this table. So if we talk about the table, we have the unit sold quantity, prices of the product. Why the prices are fluctuating? The prices are fluctuating in this because it is a part of your imperfect competition, where the products are not same. They are heterogeneous in nature, they can be differentiated, and the people or the sellers have the right to decide the prices by themselves, and because of which our prices are also fluctuating. But always remember, the price and quantity sold will go in the direction in which the demand and supply will take. That means you can also see the units sold increases and our prices are also decreasing, right? Because of the market forces of demand and supply. Now let us just calculate your total revenue first. So we know the formula to calculate the total revenue, which is equals to quantity into price. So let us just quickly multiply your column A and column B. So we have 10, 18, 24, 28, 30, 30, and 28 rupees as our total revenue. Now we can calculate the marginal revenue, average revenue. So the formula for the calculation of average revenue is equals to TR divided by N. So TR is 10, N is 1, so that's why it is 10. Then 18 divided by 2, it will give you 9. 24 divided by 3, it will give you 8. 28 divided by 4, we will get it as 7. 30 divided by 5, we will get it at 6. 30 divided by 6, we will get 5. 28 divided by 7, it is 4. So you can see your AR is equals to price. Again, this point is proved. So now let us just calculate your MR, which is equals to TRN minus TRN minus 1. Let me write the total revenue formula also, which is P into Q. And the point that AR is equals to price. So over here we have calculated as 10 minus 0, which is 10. Then, sorry, 10 minus 0 is 10 over here. Then 18 minus 10, 8. 24 minus 18, which is equals to your 6. Then 28 minus 24, 4. 30 minus 28, 2. 30 minus 30, 0. 28 minus 30 is your minus 2. Can you see this negative word? Minus 2. Right? So we have incurred negative marginal revenue at our 7th output. Right? So now let us just understand the curves. So let me teach you how we draw the curves. Your AR will be like this. Your MR goes like this. And your TR, it goes like this. So this is your TR, AR, and your MR. See? TR, AR, and MR. And now we will learn one by one the relationship between the TR, AR, and MR. And remember, we are right now learning about the imperfect markets. So you can see the diagram. It is well clearly drawn. Your x-axis represents the output, your y-axis represents the different revenues, that is average, marginal, and total, and we have drawn the curves. So now let us just understand the relationship. So we have first drawn our TR, then AR and MR. So let me just tell you the few of the characteristics which we should know about the AR, MR, and TR. The first thing is that your AR never touches the x-axis and never becomes negative because it is a average revenue and which is the price. So there will be never a time in the entire life of an organization when they are selling the goods at zero or at the negative values. So that is why our AR, our price of the product, our average revenue will never ever be equals to zero or will never be in negative terms. Our total revenues will also never be negative or will never touch the x-axis, right? Because it is total. So there will be some amount of sales because of which we are earning the total revenue. But our marginal revenue can be zero and it will be also negative. So few of the characteristics to be taken into the consideration or the relationships is that your MR is zero when your TR is at maximum. Your MR becomes negative, your TR starts falling. Can you see over here that your MR is 0, TR is at its maximum. Your MR have become negative, your TR has also started declining or becoming less in number. It is falling, right? And as your MR is positive, the moment your MR is positive, your TR is increasing, because the moment it touches the x axis and it becomes zero, it is at its maximum, and the moment it becomes negative, the TR starts falling. So the relationship between the MR and TR is, initially, TR increases at a diminishing rate with the increase in the unit and output, since more units of the goods can be sold at the low prices, such that MR is positive and it's downward sloping. When TR is maximum, MR becomes equal to 0. So let me draw the diagram over here for the better understanding. This is your TR and this is your MR, right? So you can see at initial level, your TR increases with the diminishing rate, right? We will understand what you mean by diminishing rate and all in the upcoming videos. But right now, just see that as and as your TR is increasing, your MR is also positive. It is not zero, it is not negative. But the moment your MR touches the x-axis and it is zero, your TR is at its maximum, right? And when MR becomes negative, you see over here, it becomes negative, your TR starts falling. MR becomes negative, your TR starts decreasing with an increase in the output. Your output increases, your TR starts falling. MR falls with the fall in AR. So if I draw the AR, so it will be like this. This is your AR. So your MR falls with the falls in AR. The rate of decreasing in MR is such higher than the rate in AR. MR. MR may be positive, negative, or zero, but AR is always positive since negative price is not possible. So you can see in the diagram also, in the schedule also, that when our total revenue, when your marginal revenue is zero, see, our total revenue is at its maximum, 30. And when it becomes negative, you see there is a dip in our TR also. It becomes 20. At initial level, your TR is increasing when your MR is positive, but it is increasing at the diminishing rate, right? So this is how we draw the curves of your total revenue, average revenue, and marginal revenue in your imperfect competition. Because in the perfect competition, your TR is equals to MR is equals to AR, which is equals to price. Everything is equal. There is no difference. Why? Because the prices are determined by the market forces, which is demand and supply intersects, and that price level is forwarded to all the firms existing in that industry. And we have learned the relationship amongst the TR, AR, and MR. So now let us just have a quick recap before we wind up today's video lecture. That is your meaning of revenue. So revenue refers to the amount received by the firm from the sales of say given quantity at the price. So your revenue R is equals to quantity into price. Then your revenue is our TR, AR, and MR. Then TR is equals to quantity into price. Then your AR is equals to TR divided by N, and which is always equals to the price of the product. Your MR is equals to TRN minus TRN minus 1. The relationship in the perfect competition or the pure competition is that your AR is equals to MR. You can see it over here. Your AR is equals to MR. And this is how we draw the graphs when we talk about the perfect competition. Then if we talk about the imperfect, we have seen the relationship amongst the TR, AR, and MR. This is the diagram. Your TR is in this form, your AR and your MR. We also understood the relationship that exists amongst the TR, AR, and MR, that when your MR is positive, TR increases with a diminishing returns or diminishing rate. When MR is equals to 0, your TR is at its maximum. When MR becomes negative, your TR starts falling. Your AR is always positive, it will never be 0 and negative, right? And your MR can be positive, 0, and negative as well. So now let us just have a quick recap of all the topics which we have covered today with the help of the quiz, that is your MCQ questions. So I have prepared the 10 MCQ questions and we will solve them one by one. And later on we will check the correct answers and evaluate ourselves out of 10. So the first two questions are on your screen. Question number 3 and question number 4. Question number 5 and question number 6. Question number 7 and question number 8. Question number 9 and question number 10, the last two MCQs of this video lecture. So now let's just discuss the correct answers of all the 10 MCQ questions. The correct answer for question number 1 is option B. For question number 2, it's option B. For question number 3, the correct option is option B. For question number 4, the correct option is option D. For question number 5 also, the correct option is option A. For question number 6, the correct option is option D. Question number 7, the correct option is option A. Question number 8, the correct option is option D. Question number 9, the correct option is option A. And for question number 10, the correct option is option D. I do hope that you have scored 10 on 10 in this video lecture and have understood the different revenues. So before I wind up and say you all thank you, let us just all have a quick recap on all the formulas and the topics we covered today. So we understood what is revenue. Revenue is the sales amount. The revenue are of three types. It is your total revenue, average revenue, and your marginal revenue. Total revenue is equals to quantity into price. Average revenue is equals to total revenue divided by n, and marginal revenue is equals to total revenue n minus total revenue n minus 1. Then we also understood that our price is always equals to our average revenue. Now let's talk about the perfect competition. In the pure market or perfect competition, our AR is equals to price, which is equals to MR, because the price is calculated with the help of the market force demand and supply, and at that level of price the firm sets its AR, which is equals to MR. This is quantity revenues, and this is our firm's graph. Now, let us discuss the graphs under the imperfect competition. So, in your imperfect competition, your this is how your TR looks like, your MR and your AR. So this is your TR, AR and MR. We also understood the relationship between the MR and your TR. So we said when the MR is positive, TR increases with the diminishing return. When MR is 0, TR is at maximum. When MR starts falling or becomes negative, your TR starts falling. AR is always positive and is never equals to 0 or never it is negative. But your MR can be 0 and negative as well. So that's all for today's video lecture. So I do hope that you have understood the entire concept of revenue and the different curves in both perfect and imperfect market. So thank you everyone for watching this video lecture and have a happy learning.